Hey everybody, welcome to Craft of the Yeti. I was watching the new season of The Legend of Vox Machina and got the urge to create one of my favorite moments from the show. Campaign? Both? If you're here for the crafting, timestamps can be found in the description below. Here is a refresher on that scene.
I'm gonna fly down and I'm gonna shout, Grog! Raise your arm! And I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna hit his hand with the Pokeball.
What are you doing?
I'm gonna fly over right above Kevdak, like a good 50 feet. All right, I'm gonna Pokeball Grog right out so he can attack.
So, Grog, you were released, falling down to land at, like, on top of Kevdak with the blood axe in a downward arc.
Big windup as we're coming down.
Go ahead and roll an attack.
Any chance I can make this reckless?
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
No,
No way.
then I'll get attack advantages against
Right.
you again.
Up to you.
Thank God for that.
Nice to see you.
Natural 20. The first one
What?
was a
20s?
one.
How do you want to do this? As the shadow fires from the necklace as she holds it aloft, bleeding and shaking, you appear and dive down in silence.
Oh my god!
The whole square coming towards you as Kevdak, clutching in the one nearly ruined arm, the other arm that you bisected, is turning the corner, about to open the door to dive into the house to avoid it. Looks up just in time to see you streaking down. What do?
I say, for strong jaw! And I sink the axe right into his neck and pot him perfectly down the middle.
Now, with that epic scene in my mind, it's time to get to crafting. The first thing I need to do is create a decently thick base for the scene. I do so by cutting 2 pieces of XPS foam, the same size, and sticking them together with a little bit of hot glue. I'm using these incredibly detailed minis as stand-ins for Grog and Kevdak to lay out the scene. I want to have a house in the background and want to make sure there's enough room for both. With the layout in mind, it's time to get to the details. Step 1, the street. I found a scrap piece of XPS that was about the right size and cut quite a few pavers out of it with my hot wire table. Once the tiny slices were complete, I threw them into an empty hot cocoa can with rocks and gave them the old tumble to add texture. I'm using Elmer's white glue to adhere the pavers to the base here. I squeeze the glue onto the base and spread it out with an old brush. Once the glue's dried, I flipped over the whole thing upside down and cut off the excess pieces with my utility knife. I used a metal ruler to cut off the papers that would be in the way of the house as well. The house is made out of dollar store foam core. I cut and glued a rough idea of what I wanted the walls to look like off camera, double checking scale here, and then I cut a door off camera as well, but it's a little too thick. So I'm thinning it down with my hot wire table. To make the foam look like a door, I'm drawing planks with a pen and adding wood grain with a wire brush, followed by nicking the ends with my hobby knife. The metal bits for the door were made with a thick cardstock and glued on with tacky glue. The door handle is a jewelry ring I found at a local hobby store. And I added some holes with the tip of my pen before gluing the door onto our walls. From here, I'm going to add trim around the door using XPS foam that has been textured with a wire brush and cut to size with my hot wire table. I'm using the very scientific method of this looks like about the right size and cutting the boards to length with my hobby knife. Now, our house is looking pretty square, so, off camera, I cut a roof line. The rest of the wood bits, including the window, were made using the same strategies as before. After getting this far, I wasn't happy with the size and wanted to make it both taller and wider. So, off camera I did. I also pulled the paper off the foam core walls and textured it with a foil ball. I want some light to be shining out of the window, but this foam is in the way, and that's easy enough to remedy with my X-Acto blade. To give the window some character, I'm going to use this cross-stitching mesh and pretend it's the metal inside. Does anyone know what this is called? I tried Googling, but my Google foo let me down. For the window pane, I found this clear plastic from a muffin container, and I'm going to sand it down on both sides in an attempt to diffuse the light coming through. I'll attach the pane to the back of the wall with hot glue. And my aim was a little off. In an effort to mix up the look of the house walls, I spent some time practicing drawing rocks. I attached the house with hot glue to the base. Onto the shingles. I cut out a very thin piece of XPS foam and added a wood texture with a wire brush before cutting way too many shingles on my Proxxon. Off camera, I added the backside of the house as well as support for the shingles, which is all made out of foam core. I went back and forth between hot glue and tacky glue before deciding to stick with hot glue for the shingles. Also off camera, I went through the wiring, and I've got a T-light that I have rewired, as well as an LED strip. Once the shingles were set, I cut the excess off with my utility knife. Now I think we're ready for paint. I based everything in a dark brown before hitting the streets with a mixture of brown and gray, being sure not to get 100% coverage. To add some variety, I painted a few pavers with different shades of red and brown. They were watered down and then dabbed off. The upper floor got a base coat of antique white. The stones on the main floor got a base of pewter gray. I hit the metal bits with gunmetal. All the wood got a dry brush of a chestnut color. I then dry brushed the pavers and wood with khaki. On to the washes. I hit the upper floor with a chestnut colored wash. I then dabbed off the center of the upper floor to make it look like the edges were dirtier than the center. Pretty much everything else I hit with a black and brown wash. The washes were made with inks and a tiny bit of water. Once the washes were dry, I went back and did one more round of a light dry brush in antique white. In between the pavers, I added some construction sand, making sure to brush off the excess. I then spritzed everything with IPA and watered down glue off camera. My original plan was to use these basic minis and sculpt the details with clay. I then remembered I don't have any experience with clay sculpting, and I also realized Grog slightly resembles a certain video game character who happens to have some amazing models available for purchase. I was also able to find this amazing sculpt for Kevdak, though some modifications were needed. Links for both models are in the description below. Now on to painting. I used a variety of Vallejo paints combined with some Army Painter speed paints, and a lot of the painting footage was blurry or of the cutting mat, so I just ditched it. My bad. Off camera, I also did some soldering and wiring. I'm not good at this and couldn't get that on camera either. However, I did get this. Using my wife's silhouette and her help, we cut out this phrase with vinyl and attached it to a sanded down piece of clear plastic. I'm going to use the vinyl as a mask for spray painting. Just a few more details to add, and I made these in Photoshop.
But it's fine. We have a newcomer. A newcomer who is named...
Should I have a fancy name?
Yeah, you should have a fancy fighting name.
Grog the Destroyer. Philip.
The two guards closest to you within their helmets, their eyes narrow and they look at each other and shake their heads.
Oh, bidet.
You open it and you can see inside what looks to be about 13 cards.
To clean up the edges, I cut styrene sheets to the correct size and spray painted them black before gluing them onto the diorama. Now, onto the good bits. Thanks a ton for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more.